Hey guys, Arcturus here. With Kazuha in hand, today we are going to be going over his numbers as a main DPS build using different swords. And we're also going to take a quick look at his damage as a pure support build as well. If you like what you see and would be so kind, please consider subscribing to the channel. I make Genshin Impact content regularly and plan for so much more in the future as well. Damn, that's never going to get old. Okay, so let us start with Kazuha's build. My Kazuha is level 84, fully ascended. I didn't want him to get to level 90 because you don't gain that much to get him that far. And you get all the benefits at this point, so I found 84 just as a random good medium. And his stats are as follows. His attack is not the highest at 1600, and his elemental mastery is kind of in the middle at near 400. I think this is a good stopping point because you do seem to get like diminishing returns the higher you go, and I still want to make him my main DPS build, so I think this is a good stopping point. As far as his weapons go, we will be using the Iron Sting as his main weapon, but we'll also be comparing it with other weapons. That will be the Black Sword, the Festering Desire, and the Sacrificial Sword. I chose these 4 swords because I think basically everybody has at least one of these. The Black Sword being a battle pass weapon you can purchase, and therefore everyone has access to. The Festering Desire was an event with Albedo's banner when he first released, and everybody should have R5 on that if you were playing Genshin Impact at the time. If not, you know, no big deal. But that's an option. And Sacrificial Sword is also a very good, interesting choice to kind of give him a pseudo C1. Otherwise, it just works pretty well too, and you'll see that later as well. Also, just as a side note, if you can get a Sac Sword to R5, I think this might be the best weapon for him for main DPS. But I digress. So let us take a look at his constellation. I do have him as C1 because I think this is like one of the quintessential stopping points for low spenders or free to play if you really like Kazuha, because it gives his elemental skill an extra charge or an extra use after you use his elemental burst, and 10% cooldown as well. But I think this is kind of like a Sucrose deal where you kind of got to get her C2 to get an elemental skill charge as well. Otherwise, just to have use of Sucrose's elemental skill once makes her seem kind of lackluster. I think that is the same with Kazuha as well. Without his extra charge reset here, he does feel a little lackluster. So if you have the extra Primo Gems and Wishes and you're feeling lucky, I highly recommend getting C1. It's kind of like Hu Tao as well, where her C1 basically zeroes out her stamina cost when you use charge attack with her elemental skill, which totally changes the way she plays and makes her feel a lot more fluid. C1 Hu Tao is one of those other quintessential, you know, talent levels to stop at, and I feel like for Kazuha, that is also as well. As far as talents go, I have him at level 8 everything, and as I get the resources, I will definitely move him up and definitely be crowning him because I like Kazuha just that much. Quick review of his passives. There's the Suomon Swordsmanship, which basically states that whenever he uses his elemental skill and he absorbs or comes into contact with another element when he does it, he's going to do an extra 200% of his attack as that skill additionally. So you're going to see some, you know, big numbers occasionally pop in if you play Kazuha or in this video, and just know that that is where it's coming from. And his Poetics of Fubutsu, which is what everybody's interested in. Basically, every single point of elemental mastery, Kazuha will give extra elemental damage at 0.04% bonus for 8 seconds, and you can accumulate multiple different elements during this time, which is pretty good, and it makes him a good hybrid for main support DPS, co-DPS, support DPS. It makes him jack of all trades. And then his last one, it just decreases stamina consumption of your party by 20%. I love this. I don't know about you guys. I'm sprinting in battle. I'm sprinting not in battle. And it is amazing that a character that I can like so much can have this passive talent. Moving on to artifacts, no brainer here. It's got to be the Viridescent Venerer set. I know some people out there are playing with some other sets to make it work, but personally, I don't see how you can beat a 40% elemental resistance down on enemies and extra 60% damage swirl, albeit swirl doesn't do that much damage, but it's a little extra bonus, and an extra 15% animo bonus as well. This all just adds up to making Viridescent Veneer set the best in my opinion. And all in all, what this gives my Kazuha's is a 58.6% crit rate, 130% crit damage, which is pretty good. Elemental recharge, not that much. It's only whatever secondary set stats that I get, which I don't think is a problem because his elemental burst really doesn't take that much energy as well, and his animo bonus is just 61.6% from the cup. And real fast, I wanted to show you guys the range of his elemental skill pull. As you can see, it's quite decent, and it slowly pulls the enemy towards you, which allows you to do a plunge land and plunge strike damage. Okay, now for my team. I know I made a video previously saying that I'd be using, Bennett, Xingqiu, and Beidou. However, I tried it and I decided that I wanted to highlight only Kazuha. Now, I also made a video showing what he works well with, and he works well with basically any hero, any combination you can think of. This one I've chosen here, I believe, highlights Kazuha the best. So we have Bennett, who's just going to give him more damage, which is necessary considering Kazuha is a little focused in elemental mastery, which takes away from his attack power. Now, I've been playing since the game released, and I'm a low spender. I do $5 Welcome Moon, and every other month I'll do $10 for the Battle Pass, just so I get some more resources to play with. He's at C5, obviously rolling for Kazuha. But the only thing you really need him at is C1, and this gives him extra 20% to his ult for base attack, and it removes the 70% health restriction on it, so it's always giving that bonus. So C1 is by far the most important one, and possibly the only one you need to really make Bennett work. The next best one is going to be his C5, which gives his burst an extra 3 levels, just for a little extra damage. So if you just have C1, that's great, that's all you need. Rosaria, I also got 5 copies of her rolling for C1 Kazuha. The only one she really needs though is C2, and this increases the duration of her burst by 4 seconds, from 8 seconds to 12 seconds, and it has a 15-second cooldown, so it gives it very little downtime then. So all these other ones here are only for if you want to go DPS Rosaria, which I don't, I rarely even use her. And then Chongyun is C5, and I believe I got him rolling for like Hu Tao or some other constellation on hero, but the only one he needs, if at all, is C2, and this increases attack speed. This reduces the cooldown of elemental skills and bursts cast within his elemental skill, which allows me to use Kazuha's skills more often. So I really like C2 on him, but I also use him because his elemental skill here infuses cryo, and along with Viridescent Veneer set, which reduces the enemy's resistance to cryo, and also if I swirl with cryo, then I'll get a bonus damage to cryo as well. This works well with Kazuha. It does effectively make him a cryo hero though, kind of like Ayaka. So I may not get her because I'll have cryo Kazuha, but this makes him a cryo animo hybrid unit, and I like this team quite a bit. So we're going to be using the Ruin Guard as our test subject because it has a 10% flat elemental resistance to all the elements. It does have a higher physical resistance though, so do take any physical white numbers you see with a grain of salt here. You see it looks pretty low, but I'm not going to be testing physical because I believe he's best played elemental. But I'm sure he works as physical as well. I just didn't really want to cover it in this video. Okay, we're going to start by looking at the Iron Sting versus the Black Sword. You can see that the Black Sword does more damage on the initial cast of the elemental skill, the plunge attack, and the normal and charge attacks. However, the Iron Sting build does do more swirl damage and will give you like about 6% more elemental damage bonus for any element that gets swirled for Kazuha and the rest of the team. Now, the Festering Desire and Sacrificial Sword are good options if you think you're hurting for energy recharge a little bit. The Festering Desire, you can see you still do pretty good damage with the elemental skill. Obviously, it's a subset, and you get some elemental recharge or energy recharge along with 9.3% additional elemental damage. Not bad. However, the Sacrificial Sword is pretty cool because you have the chance of getting an extra cast of your elemental skill, which actually makes it the king of damage, albeit it takes a little bit more time, but it is a way to get a pseudo Constellation 1 Kazuha without actually having to roll for it. So pretty cool options if you want to consider. None of these are bad. They're all, acceptable, they're good. So depending on whatever you have or you have built up, all great options. And now a look at their elemental burst damages. You can see that the Black Sword still does more anemo damage. However, the Iron Sting will win on swirl damage and giving your team more elemental bonus damage. So it's up to you how you would like to do your damage with Kazuha. Either normal charge attacks and anemo damage, or with swirl damage and bonus damage for your team. And finally, to round things off, here is the elemental bursts for the Festering Desire and Sacrificial Sword. You can see that with the Festering Desire, you do a little more anemo damage because your attack is higher. Swirl damage is the same. Everything else is the same for the for the burst. It's just that you get a little bit more energy recharge with the Sac Sword, and it depends on which ability you like better, Festering Desire or Sac Sword. And lastly, to round things out, here is the Iron Sting and Pure Elemental Mastery build. You can see that you really sacrifice on the damage from his abilities for a pretty good amount of swirl damage, the highest yet that we've seen, and you have to know that you're giving your team a 36.6% damage boost. I would say not bad for damage, but you got to understand it looks like you are sacrificing too much if you focus all the way in EM. In closing, Kazuha is an amazing character who works well enough as a main DPS. He's a ton of fun to play with. His animations are really clean and really smooth, and he does pretty good damage, not just for himself, but also can amplify the damage of your team as well. There are things that you can do with Kazuha that you really just can't with other characters, such as in the heat of battle, because you can't really time it given his elemental skill is a single cast with cooldown, but those moments where you use your elemental skill to jump over a Hilichurl Slam or a Fatui Charge, that kind of feeling just can't compare when it comes to other characters in this game, and is one of the reasons that Kazuha is such an amazing character, and one that I feel like is definitely worth getting on, and do not miss him. He is basically a jack of all trades that does good damage, and although he may not slap like Hu Tao or delete enemies like Ganyu, and with Yoimiya coming up, who's going to be possibly the best single target DPS in the game, he may not do that, but he does pretty darn good, and he does it in style. That's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching. I hope you gathered something here useful from Kazuha. If you liked what you saw, please consider throwing me a subscribe to support the channel, and I hope to catch you guys next time for other Genshin Impact content. Take care. Arcturus out.